Good morning. Happy Friday. It's the BWI Live Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Normally, I'm here on a Friday giving you 5 things to watch for the upcoming game, but there's no upcoming game, so I don't have 5 things for you to watch today. Sorry. The good news is we have actual, legitimate, real information from an honest-to-God reporter on the show today because Ryan Snyder's here to talk about some recruiting. Ryan, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. How do I sound, T. Frank? I didn't check my audios before the show. Do I sound all right? Where am I at?
You sound okay. We didn't get a pre-flight check before the show. It sounds all right, so I think we're gonna be okay. But you sound a little hollow more than anything.
I don't know. I have to put up some sound things in this room a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah. So we talked about this yesterday. Breaking news Thursday afternoon. If you can say a schedule is breaking news because it's, I don't know, we've done it 4 times already, Ryan, for the 2024 season. But I do want to start the show getting your comments and your thoughts on Penn State's upcoming schedule, the Big Ten release. Greg Pickle and I talked about it yesterday. You can check out that video with a full breakdown of everything. But what were your major takeaways from yesterday?
Just how excited I am, really, especially 2024, man. I mean, how could you not be excited for what next year's schedule looks like? You know, obviously, I think it was originally Michigan was going to come to Penn State. I think those were switched now with Ohio State, obviously. So you got Ohio State coming to town, UCLA coming to town, Washington. I mean, when you're lower tier, if you want to call that, Big Ten games, or Illinois, who, yeah, they're down a little bit, but Bielema seems to have them somewhat going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Maryland's certainly having a good year. We'll see what happens after, Tagovailoa leaves, but I think from a home slate, you have to be really excited about next year. And then obviously a trip out to USC for an away game is pretty fun for a lot of fans as well. So I think that 2024 schedule looks awesome. Yeah, I was hopeful. I really want to see Oregon come to Beaver Stadium, right? We'll have to wait an extra year for that. But I think it's going to be fun, man. I'm
You've embraced the modern era.
Yeah, I've always been kind of, why not? Better games, new teams, gives you something to really look forward to. It will. I mean, James Franklin's very happy not having to play Michigan and Ohio State every year. It'll be a little strange because I think Ohio State comes next year and then they don't come again till 2028, I believe.
Yeah,
that'll be strange not seeing Ohio State at Beaver Stadium for however many 4 or 5 years that is. But I mean, I don't think. Like, sure, there's a lot of fans who like the regionality, who like the Big Ten, what it is, don't like all this. And I do. And there is certainly a part of me that doesn't like how the Pac-12 situation unfolded. And, I do think that's unfortunate. But I also think it'll take a year or two and most fans will come to really like this.
So from that perspective, like the Pac-12 is no more. It's been cannibalized. What we had this conversation yesterday on the show, and I just want to get your thoughts on it. Of after 2025, like, are you predicting that everything stays the same, that there isn't more conference realignment? Have we reached an equilibrium where there's enough, I don't want to say backbone, but like financial backing of every conference now that there isn't going to be more absorption from the Big Ten and the SEC? Or do you think that there's more to come? And we're going to see more realignment before we actually get to all of these schedules that were released yesterday.
Yeah, it's all about the ACC, right? I mean, the Big 12 situation seems right to me when I look at that. And sure, maybe there'll be a little bit of flexibility there, but Florida State, Clemson, right? I mean, they've been making a fuss about the ACC situation. Obviously, their grant of rights has them locked up for a long time, but it's hard for me to see. Maybe not in 2025, but it's hard for me to see the ACC situation, something not changing there, as we get closer to the end of the decade and the buyouts or, the legal fights that'll take place, get those numbers down as far as, what it would cost for those teams to leave the ACC. So, no, I do think we're still headed for some sort of change with the ACC with time. And look, I mean, there's a lot of talk about, obviously Florida State would fit in the SEC, Clemson would fit in the SEC. But, when you look at what drives these, which is really kind of getting your conference in a new state, which then gets you more money from cable packages and things like that. It's going to be hard for me to envision the Big Ten not being interested in Virginia, in a North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina seems like the school everybody talks about as far as, the one that the SEC and the Big Ten would really like to have.
It's one of the most quickest growing. The Virginia, North Carolina area is one of the quickest growing. I'm fairly certain, on the East Coast of places that people are moving. So if you want to get an upcoming market, those teams make a lot of sense. So want to transition to what you've been working on this week and did an awesome job checking out all of the players in the class of 2024, the committed players, how their season's going, what are their stats. Before we get to that, I just also want to give you credit for, I think a lot of times when we talk about PFF and snaps, snap counts and PFF grades, on kind of what we do in the industry, most people look at just the overall grade. Ryan went in and did a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to go through and comb through, find the relevant stats, the relevant grades, and then give those for Penn State's mid-season situation. So you really got to go check those out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I think they provide a lot of great context to the the conversation around Penn State through 5 games so far. Great time to sign up, by the way, to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for a year's worth of information from Ryan and PFF and things like that. So check those out. But you recorded basically all of the stats for all of the players in the class of 2024. What was that, just the experience of doing that? What was that like this past week?
Not easy.
So you making a lot of phone calls, huh?
For us to complain about paywalls is, we can't do that, right? These sites have been paywall for a long time, and obviously we greatly appreciate everybody who subscribes, because we wouldn't be doing this show without those people, obviously, who help pay our salaries. But when you look, like, the paywall in journalism is everywhere nowadays. So it used to be, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was a lot easier to track down different stats at different newspapers. You can at least clip a couple games together. If they don't say they don't put all the stats together in one place for particular players, you can at least go back and look at games, specific game stories, and kind of find the way to put it together. That's next to impossible nowadays. So it really is coming down to coaches. And I put a tweet out earlier this week just thanking all the coaches for helping me with that stuff, because some of them track them, some of them don't. And I was kind of not adamant, but like really pushing it this week of being like, well, if you don't track them, is there any way you could for me? And a few of them did that. So I really, really do appreciate that, because it's not easy to do at the high school level. You really kind of need somebody on your staff like committed to tracking every play, and just a lot of high schools don't have that. So but we were able to get stats for pretty much everybody. Liam Andrews was one I don't. He was the big one we're probably missing that I know a lot of fans would like to learn more about. They've also only played 3 games so far, so hopefully at the end of the year I can get that together. But pretty much everybody else, obviously offensive linemen, they don't really track pancake blocks or anything like that. There was a recruit a couple years ago who tracked all of his pancake blocks. I can't remember which one it was. Somebody currently on the team that I really appreciated. But for the most part, all the skill players, linebackers, defensive backs, we were able to get some good feedback on how they're doing so far.
We'll get into that in just a second, but first, today's sponsor of the BWI Live Show is Alum Lodge, and homecoming's coming up. You want a place to stay? How about a place that's super duper nice? How about you stay at a place that's going to make you feel good and not like somebody's listening to you because you're staying in a bedroom of somebody's house in somebody's basement in some random part of town? AlumLodge.com is here for you to give you a premium experience of coming to Happy Valley and staying in an actual house that's just for you. It's, kind of like Airbnb, kind of meets Uber, because they're going to be like, what do you want in the car? What temperature do you want it in the house? Do you want to have air conditioning, not air conditioning? There's a whole bunch of different places you could stay, and a whole bunch of different experiences you could have through alumlodge.com. They've got a house in Bellefonte. They've got one in the Village that I'm showing you here on the show if you're watching on the BWI Live YouTube channel. And, of course, they have one in Park Forest, which is that is, if you want the full towny Happy Valley experience, you gotta stay for a little while in Park Forest. Like, that's just my personal recommendation. So check them out at alumlodge.com, and when you use the promo code BWI, you get 10% off your booking. So use promo code BWI to receive 10% off your booking for homecoming. You're not the only person that needs to get a head start on the second half of the season, whether it's the Michigan game or any of the games that end the season or the big ones coming up. alumlodge.com. Use promo code BWI, and you could stay in a place like this and have a good time with your family in a comfortable setting. So once again, thanks to alumlodge.com for being a sponsor here on the show. Also, good time to remind you that it's a sleepy Friday morning. Not surprised heading into a bye week, but like the video, subscribe here to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube. Help us keep the engine going as we get into an off week for Penn State football. So let's talk about this class. Let's talk about what you found on the offensive side. Then we'll get to the defensive side and some of the guys that stood out to you as players that you want to bring up here on the show.
Yeah, I think you have to start with Grunkemeyer, right? I mean, you look back at his summer, and everybody will talk about the Elite 11, but he also earned an Under Armour All-America game invite, from the way he performed at the UA regional camps. So when I look at Grunkemeyer and I look at so many other prospects across the nation, like, you won't find many players who improved his stock more. And that's not just a quarterback. I'm saying everywhere. But that only means so much until you put the pads on, right? And that's something Charles Power really kind of made clear in the summer. And sure enough, well, what has he done? Well, he's raised his stock even more. He moved up in the ratings. The 2024 ratings were updated, I think, around September 20th. I want to say a couple of weeks ago now. He moved up 38 spots to number one. Oh crap, he was 175. So what is the math there? Anyway, he's in the top 150 now. I know that. So, and just when you look at just the stats, obviously 1,663 yards passing, 19 touchdowns. He does have 5 interceptions. I know that's something that is bothering him, right? And that's you should love that about recruits, right? I remember talking to him a couple of weeks back, and he's like, "Yeah, those 5 picks bother me." And I'm like, "Hey, man, it's high school football. You're gonna make mistakes, and this is where you learn, right? Before you get to this level. But I mean, even 5 picks isn't that bad. There's been plenty of commits over the years who ended up at Penn State who've thrown more than that through 7 games, but completing nearly 70% of his passes as well, which I think is really encouraging. When you watch his offense, that's not a major surprise that he would have that high of a completion rate. His offense is really similar to Drew Aller's a couple years ago. A lot of short intermediate passes, more than really chucking it deep. But
they're coming after him.
Out there to watch. Go ahead, T. Frank. What was that?
I was just going to say, because they're coming after him. One of the things that they did to Drew Aller is you're either going to play 8 in coverage or you're going to bring 5 every single play and stress his offensive line. So he's getting a very similar treatment as, an elite quarterback on the high school level. Apparently in Ohio specifically, there's only a couple of ways you're going to play these guys. Although Jackson Smolik had a similar situation in the game you went to see him of, they just dropped everyone in coverage. So there was 10 yards to take every play. But yeah. He's completing a good number of his passes and looks good reading coverage too.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be encouraged with there, and when I trust obviously Charles, and he does a great job with scouting and stuff, and when he's comparing him to the guys across the nation, he's very adamant that Grunkemeyer is still very much on the rise, and he's a top 10 quarterback in the country now, right? You would have told me that. I mean, this is a guy who didn't have a Power 5 offer until April. That's not.
Yeah.
We do see some quarterbacks emerge late, but his felt a little later than most, and for the way that he's been able to grab the attention of scouts and so many across the country now, I think it's very, very encouraging. So to me, when I look at the stats and I look at how someone's performing, there's a lot of other guys that we'll hit on here that I think are raising their stock. But Grunkemeyer, of course, being a quarterback and having the hype that he had this summer, I think that's the most encouraging thing, is that, he really has put everything he's learned with Mandler together, not just in a camp scene, but on the field as well.
Yeah, and it's also, I mentioned reading coverage well, and I don't think he was bad at reading coverage last year, but turning all of those traits into an effective offense doesn't always translate, right? I mean, that's why we're talking about this of his numbers and his touchdowns, and it's not that that's going to make him a better player in college, but you want to see that progress of application of his quick release and his arm strength and his throwing on the run to create plays. And I think that goes hand in hand with their allowing him to create more plays this year in terms of throwing the football down the field. I haven't checked in a couple of weeks, but what I saw from the first couple of weeks, I was really impressed with the development of the offense as a whole. So it is absolutely the application on the football field, and that's why I think the conversation about that, and some fans wanted to push back on what does it matter his win-loss record, because football is a team sport, but quarterbacks have an outsized impact. And they have an outsized impact when they can elevate players, especially on the high school level. So I think that's an absolutely great point about proving it and making that thing, making all of those traits shine on the football field. He's done an excellent job with that.
Yeah, one thing I'd add too, quick to Frank, is like Steve in the chat, just talking about what kind of competition is he playing. Like it's very respectable. I mean, there's if we're going to compare it to Boca Beulah, if we're going to compare it to Jackson Smolik, it's probably better than either the competition those guys were playing week in, week out. I mean, Ohio is obviously loaded with we talk all the time about those top tier Ohio State, Penn State kind of guys, but Ohio has so many players that go on to play Division I at some sort of level, you know, whether it's FCS or Group of Five or whatever it may be. I mean, when I look at the schools, obviously Medina is where Drew Aller came from. They have a couple guys who will certainly play on the FCS level this year. Westerville South, I think that's where Caden was from. He's from one of the Westervilles. I think you're right. I don't think they have any true Division I guys right now. I don't believe, but like Olentangy Orange, one of their rivals, they always have stack guys. I mean, Zach Harrison came out of there a couple years ago. So I don't know all of the FCS guys and all these different schools. I mean, I do know Whitmer, the first team they played this year, they have Carter Lowe, who's a really quality lineman that Penn State's actually offered. So he's going against good competition. Honestly, that's not too much of a concern there. I think it's a good thing. I mean, it's for the most part the same kind of competition that Aller was going against, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to kind of point out, like, if you're a quarterback that has an advanced mental aspect to your game, in high school you're playing a lot of static coverages. So like teams are going to play cover 3, they're going to play cover 4. I've seen a couple of actually games where they did more after the snap than I was expecting. Like, there's been some good defenses he's gone against that do a little bit more, but for the most part, like, if you can read coverage and like be really good at it, which Penn State's quarterbacks have been really good at it, the ones that Mike Yurcich just brought in, that's been a common theme, is they read and diagnose well. So like it I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because obviously the talent that you have versus the talent you're going up against matters, but he's been able to, I think, effectively play well because of his mental skills, which is kind of what we're trying to measure here, more so than just pure talent versus perspective. Is there somebody else we want to get to on the rundown here?
I mean, there's a ton of guys, so we can talk about a few. I mean, I feel like we have to brush on Quinton Martin just kind of briefly there. I mean, Bell Vernon doesn't track. They track his stats, right? I have his stats. He's just over 400 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns, has about 140 or so yards receiving on the year. I mean, obviously Quinton does a little bit of everything, right? So that's been good. I mean, there's not a ton of film out there on Quinton. You know, they put together some quick highlights of his touchdown runs and things like that. But he's certainly. I mean, I went and watched Quinton last year. I'm sure I'll go watch him at some point this year. Later, I'm hoping, as we talked on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, like really hoping they all can get to the Whitfield championships there, and I can see him and O'Hara and Tyke Hayes and obviously Central Catholic guys all at once. But, one thing I will hit on is Corey Smith, running back from Catholic Memorial. He's out injured right now. Was able to dig more on that situation, though, and it does sound like he will be back for the playoffs, which is encouraging. Broken collarbone. That's all publicly out there now if you search different papers and stuff. So I'm good with talking about that. But yeah, from what I understood, it was an 8-week diagnosis, which I think it was his first game he got hurt in. Give it 8-9 weeks. That's pretty much right when the playoffs should start. So I'm not sure if he'll be back that first week for them. Wisconsin starts its playoffs a little earlier than most. I think it's the same weekend as Ohio State. So what is that, like 2-3 weeks from now is when Wisconsin will be starting its playoffs. But so Corey Smith's been out, but sounds like everything's going well with his collarbone, and he should be able to make it back. So let's go to Peter Gonzalez, though. I feel like we do have to really hit on Peter Gonzalez.
These are nuts.
Yeah, I mean his highlights look really good, man. Really, really happy for Peter too. I mean, we've detailed his situation and how his knee injury really set his recruitment back a good bit. And this was obviously he played last year, came back halfway through the season, but this was the year that really kind of seeing him put it all together. Right now, 20 receptions, 578 yards, 8 touchdowns. He had a absolutely massive game against Cannon McMillan last week, getting 7 for 268 and 3 scores. So a lot of those stats, almost half of his yards really came from one game. He had a massive game last week, but it's more so.
Ryan, just want to point this out as another crazy stat here. He is 2 touchdowns shy of 50% of his catches going for touchdowns. Like if he's 20 receptions, 8 touchdowns, that's crazy. Like his production per catch has been out of this world, because that offense, and I know you've watched them a bunch and you knew about this going in with their 7-on-7 team, they are loaded with talent. So like when you get your catches, you got to do something with them, because they're going everywhere with the football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Central Catholic right now looks like the best team in the state. Obviously St. Joseph's Prep, right? They're always going to be there. Obviously Prep probably has the more deeper talent, but if that ends up being our PIAA 6A state championship, I suggest all of you guys get out to Cumberland Valley for that one, because it looks like it would be one of the more exciting 6A state championships I think we've seen here in recent years, because Central Catholic is for real. We'll hit on Specca here in a little bit when we switch over to defense. He's having a phenomenal season as well. But outside of that, Luke Reynolds has only played in 2 games so far. Doing well though, man. 10 receptions, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, for 2 games, that's pretty. That certainly has my attention. Tyseer Denmark's been doing really well with his transition to Imatep. I feel like what's the best way to put it? Like I don't feel like we've seen him change a whole lot of like what he does well. It doesn't look like any faster or running any different routes or anything. He's just very consistent, I guess, is the best way to kind of put Tyseer. He does a lot of good things. He's like a B+ in everything, if that makes sense. Or A- in everything, which is encouraging. So Tyseer on the year, I think he's at 22 receptions for a little under 20, like a little over 200 yards. And I think he has 6 touchdowns, I want to say. Actually, what is he? 3 touchdowns, excuse me. So, Tyseer's having a good year. And Imatep's another one of those schools, obviously, with Jabri Wallace-Coleman and a bunch of guys that they spread the ball out a ton. So when you only see 218 yards, you think, and you compare it to Gonzalez then, I think that grabs people's attention. But you also have to remember how many talented Division I players are on his team. But he's certainly doing well. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing is, the way they're being used. You mentioned he's not doing anything different. As a slot receiver is just harder. Like it's a little bit like being a running back to get explosive plays. Like you can get some vertical shots, you can be used in the vertical game, but that isn't Tyseer's style. Like he is elusive and, a pure slot receiver in terms of the ability to create space with two-way goes and his agility. He's not going to be running 9 routes like Peter Gonzalez. Peter Gonzalez's average depth of target is probably like 20 yards down the field because he's just used as a big play target and they're converting. So you're not going to have, this is the interesting context you got to put to some of these numbers, so that they make a little more sense, right? So you mentioned just usage is important as well.
For sure. So switch over to defense. Did we miss anybody? I guess I missed Josiah. Josiah
Brown.
This is
up to you. Yeah. I just want to go through the ones you want to talk about.
Right? I don't care about making stats public. That's all. That's all fine. Josiah's doing a little bit of everything. He's rushing the ball. He's catching the ball. He actually has more rushes than receptions this year, which I found interesting. He only has 7 receptions, 155 yards, 4 touchdowns. But he also has 12 rushes for 201 yards and 2 touchdowns in. So 6 total, a little shy of 400 yards on the year. He has 2 INTs on defense as well. Remember with Josiah, he was at Holy Trinity for a couple years and then switched back to his hometown. And I think it's Mount Vernon. Or it's Malvern. I'm not exactly sure. It's one of those.
But not Malvern Prep, right? I just want to.
No. That's in Philadelphia.
Okay. All right.
But my point there is he went back to his hometown school so he could enroll early at Penn State.
Gotcha.
And so he can get back to get up here in January. I guess if he stayed at Holy Trinity, he was not able to graduate early. So he's playing with a whole new team this year. Guys he's known, obviously, guys he played with in youth league and stuff like that and grew up with around his neighborhood. But this is actually his first year playing with that team.
Yeah, so let's get to some of the defensive players. I do want to get to one comment in the chat. We'll give us a little bit of a diversion, then we'll get back to our main focus today. But Ryan had a good question. Ryan from Texas is saying, love to hear Ryan's take on recruiting now that USC and Oregon are in direct competition. Seems to me NIL becomes bigger. Does the footprint expand for teams now that they're in the Big Ten, and vice versa? Does California, Oregon become more of a recruiting bed that's realistic for Penn State? Because I think that this has been kind of a mixed message and a mixed bag with guys like David Polly going to USC, Elijah Newby going to USC. Suddenly this is happening as soon as they're in the Big Ten. But are those just kind of, are those correlated facts, or are those facts that are kind of, random chance that they happen at the same time?
I would say that like USC and Oregon have always kind of got guys from out east to go west, much more than Penn State and really Penn State. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State are kind of getting a little more national guys, although they're more, I don't want to say they're really too many West Coast guys. But could it have a little bit of impact? Maybe. I don't see it being massive. NIL is like you put there, it seems to me NIL becomes bigger. Like it becomes bigger just like that's kind of what people are doing with recruiting nowadays. Like it doesn't, I don't really associate the West Coast schools and having an impact on Penn State and what Penn State has to do from an NIL perspective to stay on top in the Big Ten. I mean, to me, it really comes down to wins, just consistently being in that college football playoff. It doesn't matter who you're playing, but when it gets to 12 teams, you got to be there the majority of the time if you want to keep recruiting at the level they are. And nothing that I've seen so far makes me think that Penn State is not, maybe not every single year in the playoff, but they're going to be in the mix, I think, the vast majority of the time. I mean, Penn State should be top 15 the majority of years, certainly top 20, no doubt. But there's a part of me that thinks having Oregon and USC in the Big Ten will help them get a few, maybe, grab a few more guys from the East Coast, Maryland, DC area. They both recruit well in that area. But I don't see Penn State now, because they're playing USC and UCLA, getting a ton of Southern California guys. It's really different in State College compared to Southern Cal.
It's much easier to convince somebody to go to Los Angeles than it is to convince somebody from Los Angeles to go to State College. Like, I love it here. Growing up, this was a place that had more to do than I'd ever seen in my life. So that should tell you where I came from. But if I came from a big city, very different story. And that's kind of like, that's kind of always been the thing with State College that you and Fitz talk about all the time, is just even getting here is part of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the whole big noon kickoff is a massive issue. Like Penn State, honestly, Penn State having their whiteouts at night and even switching up the opponents, like from a recruiting perspective, is one of the major reasons why that is an issue. And we were on the message board today, and I had someone asking me like, "Hey, is there a chance that like a Zaire Mathis or Maxwell Roy end up going to Columbus for the Penn State Ohio State game?" And first off, Zaire has a game that day, so he wouldn't. But like for Maxwell Roy to get there for a noon kick in Columbus, first off, it's a 1,000-mile round trip. He plays in Maryland the night before. Like the big noon kick is certainly an issue for recruiting as much as anything else. But what also keeps you in recruiting is the money that comes in from big noon kick. So it's it just kind of goes both ways there.
I want to bring this up because he brings NIL up again, saying, look at the opportunity Caleb Williams has now to to the NFL based on the amount of money he can make next year in NIL. I guess the only pushback I'd have there is that it would be very hard for Caleb Williams, who's an individual that is unique, right? So he's going to be a top 3 pick in the NFL.
He's probably number 1 pick.
He's going to be the number 1 pick.
Period.
Like, I just for argument's sake, like not even say the number 1 pick, but a top 5 salary in the rookie wage scale does change this a little bit, where if it were the way it was 15 years ago and you could negotiate your deal, there's no question in the NFL you make more money. But if he's interested, like if he's following who's going to be the number 1 pick, and it's like, I don't want to go to New England, or I don't want to go to wherever, New York, he can choose to stay, make $1 million, and then go the next year. But it does.
He's making more than $1 million. There's a reason you don't see many other players in Wendy's commercials and all
Right.
those other, I mean, Caleb's just one of the few examples of really maximizing NIL, and LA has it does have something to do with that as far as being in those national commercials. It's a lot easier to access those studios, and obviously not all of those commercials are filmed out in LA. New York's a hotbed for that stuff as well, but yeah, certainly, I mean, USC has a lot to offer when it comes to that stuff. If you can become a massive, national player, a Heisman Trophy candidate, LA has a lot to offer there. But at the same time, man, if Caleb Williams went to, Ohio State, Penn State, whatever, like he'd still be massive, and coming off a Heisman Trophy, I don't know he'd be making quite the same money that he is at USC though. And also, he's definitely going pro this year. There's no chance he goes back to college. There's no chance we see him play Penn State. No way.
My point is, according to the internet, 2023 draft estimate for the number 1 overall pick is $41 million. He's not making $41 million at USC. So like he's a unique player that, sure, he's got a lot on this level, but he's going to have way more pretty much guaranteed at the next. So, I do think it can change the decision for some guys, but some guys it's obvious. Olu Fashanu shouldn't come back this year. He's doing enough that he needs to go and needs to take the money. Okay.
Speaking of that, we were talking about those PFF stats earlier. Olu has the best pass grading stat in the entire country this year. I did not, or out of Power 5 schools at least. That was one thing.
One pressure total?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. You would know the pressure part better than me. I was looking more so at the grades, but he has the highest rated pass blocking grade in the country right now. So that was one of those things I took away from that.
He's looked like it too. He's been unbelievably impressive as a pass protector. Defensive players, guys that are going to be trying to knock the quarterback down and make those stats look terrible, especially for Penn State's internal stats during practice. Mm-hmm. Who are the guys that stood out to you on the defensive side of the ball that you were able to track down stats for?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll just kind of run through them. I mean, starting with the defensive line, like I said, haven't been able to get anything on Liam Andrews. It's tough to track down those New England schools often, and Dexter Southfield is certainly one of those schools that it's been difficult to track much. We'll work on that certainly for end of the season. I really want to get his stats at the end of the year, especially because O-line, D-line talk. How's he performing as a D lineman? There's not really much film or anything, so. That will be very high on my list of things to figure out when the season ends. I mean, DeAndre Cook right now, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Don't have all of his tackles, but he's certainly getting in the backfield. That's good. That's through handful of games. Xavier Gilliam, 21 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack. I mean, the thing with Quince Orchard, obviously everybody knows about Jalen Harvey, but man, their entire defense is really good as far as again, players who will play at the FCS level or some sort of level of college football. They've pitched I think it is 4 shutouts in their 5 games. That's awesome. And the only team they really gave up points was against Stonebridge, who anyone who knows Virginia football, I mean, Stonebridge is always in the mix for state championships. So they're performing really well. I think Mylachi Williams is certainly a guy we got to hit on. 23 tackles so far this year, 10 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, also 2 pass deflections and a fumble recovery. Very encouraged with Williams. They're playing good competition. I wouldn't say it's as stacked as some other guys Quince Orchard's probably playing a little bit better competition than a few others. But with Williams, man, I mean, there's so much to like about him and what he brings athletically. Stats obviously are good to see, but they also only mean so much when it comes to defensive linemen and a few other positions. But
he's playing the run much better this year. I like he's added some weight, he's added some strength, and I had some concerns just the way he was playing the run, where trying to run around guys, giving up ground to try and get around them, that's not going to fly at the next level. So like building bad habits, but he's added more strength, and I think he's doing a much better job of shedding blocks and being a vertical player instead of trying to, slow play some things. I think he's been much better against the run, which you're right, is you're not going to see that in tackles even, really.
Yeah. As linebackers go, Kari Jackson right now is out injured. I don't know the injury, which I'm a little trying to figure that out. They've been very, very coy and quiet about his situation, but I don't believe he's going to play this season, which is unfortunate because I feel like Kari's been one of the most overlooked players in this class. Like he committed And then we kind of moved on to other commitments. And I feel like I haven't given him nearly the attention he deserves. And when we got to see him on the sidelines for one of the games earlier this year, like he looks really good and impressive looking. I think he's really maybe not added weight, but just some good weight since the last time I saw him, which was, back in I think it was it even in the spring? I might have even been beyond that, maybe in last season. I think about last time I saw him truly in person. But anyway, Kari's just kind of, I feel like, gone under the radar a bit, and whatever this injury is, it's been very kind of hush hush. So that's something I'm going to have to work on here in the weeks and months ahead. But Anthony Specca, when we talk about linebackers, I mean, Specca is probably having one of the more impressive seasons, I think. 43 tackles, 30 solo, 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 fumble recovery. T-Frank, I apologize. I should have told you to cut his film earlier. That's on me. I was working on some other stuff. I should have shared that with you. But he go look at Anthony Specca's huddle film. He just put that out.
I can pull it up. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, he just put it out the other day. And boy, you want to talk about delivering some big hits and playing more aggressive and really kind of, improving his first step and reading guards. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah. When you look at his previous film and you look at now, I feel like he's one of the guys that pops out to me more as far as someone who's really kind of taken another step this year. This is a massive hit. I feel bad for this kid. You kind of see him there in the middle. He's going to come across the field, just destroys the kid. I feel bad for him. But it's more so plays like this, just kind of the way he's able to read and react and, get big hits in the backfield. And obviously he went unblocked there. There's a few others in here that really kind of grabbed my eyes. And, like even that play there, I think a lot of guys are going to go to their left and kind of lose their balance. But the way he's able to kind of read the quarterback well and, keep his feet and go get the play. I think there's a lot to like, especially for a player, we talk about all the time who, doesn't run as fast as some others, but like, man, he ran really well at Penn State this year. I think he had a 4.7, I thought it was. So, I mean, Specca to me is still kind of one of the more underrated players in the class. Yeah. We have him. So one thing I've kind of learned about On3's state system and how the state rankings work is it's kind of more so like algorithm based than truly like Charles putting where exactly he wants that guy to be rated in the state. Because right now, Specca is rated like 15th in Pennsylvania. And there's no doubt in my mind that he is a top 10 player in the state. Yeah. So it's kind of one of the things where, we're trying to build a website and we're trying to build all the controls and all the different things. And that's like something we have to get fixed at On3. Like you shouldn't be putting in, a handful of guys as a, whatever it may be, an 88 3-star, right? And then it kind of, it's not, Charles isn't saying he's 15 or 14 or 13. It's kind of more like, okay, these are all the 88s and they kind of just get lumped together. But people care about that. They being 15th to the state, being 8th in the state, that matters. And that's something I think we gotta work on here at On3 and get fixed. And I know there actually are, but I've had a few talks with people about that. So, but Specca to me, again, I mean, if you're going to talk about him being the 15th ranked kid in the state, like, no way. He's definitely top 10 in my eyes. And I think he's putting it together on the film here, as you're seeing so far this year.
I appreciate Central Catholic because they're one of the few teams that still, it's super easy to find their games. So I'm able to go in and watch them. And he and Peter Gonzalez, and I just want to echo what you said. His vision, I was a little nervous about him, kind of like what's his translatable skills because he was so aggressive. But you're right. He has really dialed it in. I think he understands football at a deeper level now. And the speed is always interesting, Ryan, because you look at him, you watch him, and he knifes through the offensive line. He's explosive, but you don't ever see him running in the open field, I guess. So, like, the only thing that really concerns me necessarily about him is really his size. I don't think the speed is really an issue. It's going to be arm length and mass for him because he's going to play in the box. And he's got to be able to do the things he does now, but do them against bigger competition. And that's going to be the area where I'm interested to see how he develops and how he's able to put on mass in the future. Some of the other guys.
I got to get Mr. Andrews' number in here. Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I appreciate it. I've been trying to track down Liam's stats for a couple of weeks now. So
the BWI Live exclusive.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I appreciate it. I need to get your number. We need to catch up some point. Message me online or whatever it may be. I'm not going to hand out my number on a YouTube page, but I will, honestly, to get in touch with you. Actually, I probably should, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I've just been trying to track down Liam's stuff. It's been a little difficult this year, but I appreciate that. So sounds like he's having a good year though. And, just excited to see him. He's another guy I'd love to get up there for. We're just trying to, balance our travel budgets. And when we go places, you try and see multiple people, and it makes it kind of a little hard to go to Boston at the moment. But good to hear Liam's doing well. And thank you for that. I appreciate it. Switching over to defensive backs now. I mean, obviously, yep. John Mitchell, Antoine Belgrave-Shorter, both having very good years. Sean and I have talked a long time about, Belgrave-Shorter, probably one of the more underrated guys in this class, especially at least like from the feedback we get. Penn State feels very, very good about Belgrave-Shorter and Mitchell. When you look at their ratings, there's a big discrepancy there. But both are playing on a very high level. I mean, Mitchell has 31 tackles so far for a cornerback, which is what I think is really good. Belgrave-Shorter is just behind him with 26. I mean, they're both getting TFLs. They both each have an interception this year. I think Mitchell's up to 8 pass deflections with Belgrave's at 3. But those are two other guys that, go look at their midseason film. Certainly look at Belgrave's midseason film. I think fans will be really encouraged by that. Kenny Wosley's fun, man, because he's doing kick returns. He's their field goal kicker. As far as the QB, 15 tackles, 10 solo so far, 2 interceptions. I think we talked about the interception he had on Malik Washington in that Archbishop Spalding game, which was really impressive. I mean, it was to win the game. It kind of you got to look at the highlight of it, but I don't know how he caught that ball. Just kind of does like a flip in midair. It was really good. But, he's also produced a little bit on special teams there. I'm not sure if he'll be a special teams guy at Penn State, but, 4 kick returns for 132 yards and certainly has my attention there. And I love the field goal kicking stat, man. He's 2 for 3 on the year. I believe it's 2 for 3 on the year, 32 yards. Yeah, this should be his interception against Malik. But by the way, he also 27 to 31 on extra points. Good work, Kenny. Keep it up on the kicking. I was shocked this year. There's that pick. It's just the way he kind of falls down. He ends up catching that ball somehow, which I'm still mystified on how he came down with that. But now when I was at this game earlier this year, I was like, wait, is that Kenny? Is that Kenny kicking a field goal right now? Like I had no idea that he was their kicker this year. So that was cool to see. But Kenny's just a dog, man. Like we talk about that all the time. Obviously Belgrave-Shorter and Mitchell kind of have a little more physical traits that kind of pop, but Kenny's just one of those guys that gets after it. Some of the hits he delivers, man. I mean, there's no hesitation with him at all. I mean, I've said it many times.
That's why he's on the Penn State roster, because if he's got to play big, Daquan Hardy's got to play like in a similar player. They have to play to a certain size because they don't have those physical traits. And if he's going to be a slot only guy, especially, you have to do some stuff in the run game if you're going to be that guy. So you're right. I like the way he plays and his aggressiveness and the way he sees the field coming downhill as well.
Yes, for sure. For the final two guys, it's safety. Vabu's right around. I don't have specific absolute stats. Their coaches kind of gave me estimates. He's right around 50 tackles on the year. I mean, Torrey's another guy. He doesn't have midseason film at this point, I don't believe. But if you just kind of go look at his individual games, man, just delivered some massive hits. You want to talk about an aggressive safety, man? He gets after it as well. And then Dejon Lane's at 30 tackles on the year through 5 games with 1 interception. And he's another guy. Actually, they're playing Archbishop Spalding tonight. And I was trying to go down to that game. But it's also like 70-80% chance of rain in the region tonight. So I'm like, do I want to drive down there? And then, I can't film or anything because it's in the rain. And I'm not a professional photographer, right? So I'll definitely screw up my camera if I take it out in the rain. But trying to figure out where I'm going to go tonight still. I'm still thinking about driving down to Baltimore, but kind of looking at the radar here. So, I think, again, we'll go back to Grunkemeyer's been very encouraging. I think Specka's been very encouraging. Williams been very encouraging. And, just kind of looking forward to seeing how some of these guys do in the second half of their season. And, to some degree, see how these guys lead their teams to wins and taking next steps. I mean, with Grunkemeyer, like Olentangy hasn't had a 6-1 start in 6-7 years or something. So it's good to see. Obviously, you put up stats, you put up numbers, but you're leading your team to wins, right? And that's what you want. You want winners on your team, guys who get it done and take your high school program to the next level. And if you get a handful of those guys in the class, that's a good thing for a school like Penn State.
Kind of wrapping all of this up, and this is going to give you, I believe this will give you the nature of this program. Penn State does not have any 5-star talents in the class, but this came out from On3, I believe, yesterday or this morning. You can check out more about this with Greg. Greg Pickle wrote about this at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com this morning. Most blue chip commits on offense, and Penn State, 9 blue chip commits on offense in the class of 20. Is this in the class of 2024, right? Ryan?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they only have 5 commits in the class of 2025. So, yeah.
I didn't know if it was like on the roster currently or something like that. But yeah, I think this illustrates what the class of 2024 is, where you've got a lot of guys that are very intriguing, really good football players. Maybe they aren't the 5 stars, but I do think this class compares favorably to 22 and 23, where you've got guys that have massive upside. Like, I know that Javen Williams was a 5-star, but if you're asking me who has more potential with size, frame, athleticism, like, it's hard for me not to say Garrett Sexton isn't right there with him in terms of overall talent. And, I love length at tackle. So that, certain edges might go one way or the other. And then Ethan Grunkemeyer, obviously not a 5-star quarterback, but really impressive, who has radically changed his recruiting profile. So what are your thoughts on 24 after looking at all of these stats and kind of comparing what we just saw from there?
Yeah. I mean, not a lot of space. Yeah. I shouldn't say a lot, but if there's talent, they can still add 3-4 guys, I think is kind of realistic. We'll see here in the weeks ahead how that all plays out, but certainly Terry Smith would love to add another defensive back to his class. We know Jalen Harvey, Ernest Willer, right? Defensive lineman. Sean did a great article the other day on kind of the committed guys they're after right now. I mean, no secret. I think wide receiver, everybody knows they'd love to add another wide receiver. No secret. I think that they'd love to add another offensive lineman as well. I mean, even having all the O linemen they have committed, which, by the way, there was another graphic similar to the one you posted the other day where it was like blue chip offensive and defensive linemen when you put together Williams and Andrews and a couple other defensive guys with the O-line class they put together. And Penn State ranked really good in that too. I think they were like 3rd or something like that. I wish I had that graphic right now, but anyway, I mean, they're putting together some really good classes up front on both sides of the ball there. So we'll see as far as where things go. I mean, I certainly think there's going to be a few more additions to this 2024 class. It's definitely not done. We know Jalen Harvey will be someone that they are on to the very end. And, there's a handful of guys out there who right now, again, are committed elsewhere, but players that they really want to get on campus here for maybe official visits in December, or, that Michigan weekend, for example, is I think we could see a couple official visits then. So, we'll see how things play out. But O-line certainly feels like a spot I could see them adding someone. They like to add someone at wide receiver. Whether they do or not would probably depend on who the player is. But that's certainly a spot they want to. And then, as we've talked about with defensive line as well, and maybe a defensive back.
So check out all the information as it develops from Ryan Snyder at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Never a bad time to sign up, but you can sign up for $1, try it out, or you can go dive head first and get it for a year, which when I'm doing stuff, why mess around? You're here, you're watching a 40-minute video on YouTube. You clearly like Penn State football recruiting, and there's one place to go get all of the information. Ryan, thanks so much for all your time today.
Yeah, I'm going to make our stats. I mean, we kind of went over them all today, but I'm going to make them free over the weekend and get them on Facebook. So if you guys want to look at the film we collected as well, and, a few other tidbits on how teams are doing and stuff, look for that probably Saturday. I'll put them up. We'll make them free for everything. And it's really more so looking at the film and stuff like that. If you really want to dig into it a little bit more, like I said, Facebook Saturday, I'll make them free for everybody.
So check that out. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. He is Ryan Snyder. Thanks to everybody who participated in the show this week. Thanks to everybody who showed up.
Enjoy the bye week, guys.
Enjoy your bye week. Don't go too far. We'll be back on Monday with more Penn State football talk as they get into their second half push. It's coming, Ryan. The games that everyone cares about.
The Minutemen of UMass.
Yes, everyone's waiting for the UMass game. We'll talk to you later.